Hey friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Bicycle Built for You, Absolutely Awesome, Treat Cart Add-on Coffee, Little Woodland Library, Fly High, Just Add Glitter, Terrific Day, Wild Wolves, and the Scent with Love add-on. So I've stamped those images out on 2 panels of Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. So I am going to start with the skin, and I am using E000, E00, and E11 for that, because I am coloring myself and my husband on this card. So I'm starting with the E11, adding some shading under the hairline and on the backs of the arms and legs for me, and then just on his hands for him, along with his face. Blending out with the E00 and filling in with the E000. Then I'm going to move on to the hair, and for myself I have kind of reddish brown hair, so I'm going to use E13, E15, E17, and E18. And normally when I color hair, I start lightest and work my way into the darker colors, but because these images are more simply drawn, I find that I tend to try to overdo it a bit with the hair on these ones and just add more streaks than are necessary and all of that. So today I just decided to go straight in with my darkest colors and just add a few little details into the hair to make it look a little bit more flowy and realistic. So I did that with the E18, blended out with E17, then E15 and E13, and I used E17 for the coffee inside the little cups. Then I'll move to my husband's hair, and he has kind of like a lighter brown hair, and so I'm going to use the E50s for that. I'm using E51, E53, E55, and E57. So I started with the E57 and added a few little streaks for the low lights, and then I'm blending out with the E55. Then I'll come in with the E53. And I'm saving a little bit of room for the E51 to soften that even further. And then I'm also going to use those darkest 3 shades for the basket on my little hot air balloon. And I also use them for the tree trunk on the second panel, which I will color off screen. Then I'm going to move on to E40 and E41, and any objects that I want to look white, I'm going to color with these 2 shades. So I'm adding the E41 for a little bit of a shadow, blending out with the E40, and then leaving the plain white cardstock for the highlight. And as you're going to see as this card starts to come together, this card is actually a little love letter to Paris. This is for our current Lawn Fanatics challenge, which is a sightseeing challenge, and we're supposed to depict a place that we have visited or would like to visit. And I have actually had a lifelong dream to go to Paris, and I will be heading there very shortly. Actually, by the time you're watching this video, I will already be home. But as I'm filming this video and doing the voiceover, I am leaving in like 2 days. So I'm very, very excited. I can't wait. But anyway, I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. I've moved on to my blue combo, which is B24, B26, and B29. And I did the left side of my hot air balloon because I'm trying to represent the French flag with that hot air balloon. And then I also did 2 of the pennant banners and the bow on the roses. And then I'm also going to give myself a little blue dress because Sapphires is my birthstone, which is the birthstone of September, and I will actually be in Paris for my birthday this year, which is so, so exciting. So I gave myself a blue dress, and then I colored my husband's pants to match. So they're like blue jeans, but I just wanted to have this brighter French blue so that everything coordinated. And I accidentally grabbed the B29 for my highlight instead of the B24, but that's okay. I'll just go over it again with the B24, and that softened it enough. And it was the far leg anyway, so it's okay that it looks a little bit more shadowed. I forgot to do my wrapper for my roses, so I went back to the B40s that I had already used, but I added in the B42 because I wanted it to be just a little bit darker and creamier. And I also did leave a little bit of white space on there as well, so it didn't look too brown. And I'm also going to use these shades for my husband's shirt, because when we first met, he had this super cozy, like, fisherman's knit sweater that was like a cream color, which I just loved him in, and he still owns it. So I don't know if he's going to take it with us to Paris, but I just decided to give him that sweater. I'm going to do my little beret and shoes and my husband's shoes in red, and I used R22, R24, and R29 for that. My husband actually always wears red sneakers. It's kind of like his little signature accessory. I don't have red shoes, but I just decided to do them to match the beret so that everything coordinates. And then I will do the right side of my hot air balloon in red, and also the center pennant banner. And I'm going to do my roses red as well. So I doubt that I will be getting roses for my birthday in Paris, because we're only going to be there for like 2.5 days. But Paris is known for their beautiful flowers, so I just thought it would be a fun element to include on this card. And yeah, actually we are flying into London, which I've also never been to before and have always wanted to go to, and staying there for 2 full days, and then taking the train to Paris for 2 more full days, and then we're taking the train on to Germany to visit my husband's family. And yeah, I cannot wait. I have always wanted to go to London and Paris, and this is like a trip of a lifetime for me. I'm giving us some rosy cheeks with our 000, R11, and R20. And then I'm also going to color in a couple of these little treats on the 2-tiered tray. And I'll also do the macaron, and just used all 3 shades for that. And I decided to include that little tiered tray as kind of like a nod to our London trip, because I've actually booked us an afternoon tea, which I'm really excited about. I'm really leaning into the full London and Paris experiences. So yeah, I'm super excited for that. And then I wanted to do the table and chairs in black to make them look like wrought iron. So I used C5, C7, and C9 for that, using the C9 on the outer edges and then down on the legs where it would be cast in shadow, blending out with the C7, and then I'll use the C5 for the highlight, and I'll also do the chairs on that separate panel off screen, just like the tree. And then I'm going to stay with the cool grays for now, because I'm actually going to color in that little crow from the Wild Wolves stamp set to look like a pigeon. I just thought that would be like the perfect Paris accent. So I'm going to keep that C5 and bring in C0, C1, and C3. And I definitely had to look up pictures of pigeons to know how to color that, because the head is usually a little bit darker than the body and the wings. And then they have stripes on their wings, the dark gray stripes. So I went ahead and added those with the C5. But they also have like a green patch and a purple patch on their throat area. So I'm using BG72, BG75, and I'm going to bring in BG70 as well for the kind of teal patch, the greenish teal patch. And then I wanted to bring in some purples, so I'm going to use V000, V01, and V04 for that, and I'm placing it right under the teal green. And I have to say that did turn out pretty darn close to what a pigeon looks like, so I was pretty proud of that. I'm also going to throw a little bit of the purples into these little decadent little desserts. And then I'm going to move on to BG quadruple 0, BG 10, and BG 11. I'll do 2 more of those, and I also did the clouds on my second panel. Then I'll switch to some greens. I'm using YG01, YG03, and YG05. I did the stems of the roses with the YG05, used all 3 shades for the grasses and also for the leaves on my tree on the other sheet. And then I lightened that up slightly and did those lightest 3 shades for the last little dessert. And then I went back to R22 for the filling for my macaron. And I'm going to go back to my E50s for my croissant. I just forgot to color that when I had those shades out. So E50, E51, and E53, kind of drawing in all of the little lines to make them look nice and flaky. And then I'll bring in the second sheet and trim these all out with their matching dies. For my background, I've cut down the largest of the small stitched rounded rectangle stackables, and I am going to create a quick background using some Salvage Patina Distress Oxide ink and the Lawn Fawn Cloudy stencil to create my sky. So I am just starting on that stencil, and I'm using a very light pressure for this one today. I wanted that background to be really soft. So I am going to turn that stencil until I get a new cloud formation that I like, and then I'll continue working my way down the panel. I usually tend to go for much bolder colors in the background, but for whatever reason today I just wanted the coloring to really stand out, and I wanted the background to just be a bit softer and more dreamlike. Maybe because this is like the trip that I've dreamed of for all of my life, I don't know. But I'm going to do 4 different cloud formations, add a little bit of ink down at the bottom so that last cloud isn't so stark white. And then I'm going to grab the Slimline Grassy stencil and line that up on the lower part of the card, and I will bring in Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink. I'm going to start with that right where the grasses are and just hold that into place. And I did shift it a little bit by accident, but it's pretty easy to line back up. And once I have that Twisted Citron laid in, I'm going to darken it up just a tiny bit with some mowed lawn. And again, I'm going to be really soft with this because I wanted the grass to kind of match the intensity of the sky. And this is going to just match really well with the greens that I used in my Copic coloring. Then I wanted to do a little splatter detail, so I'll press some of both of those inks onto an acrylic block, add a bit of water to them, and mix that up with a thin paintbrush, tap it off the side of the block so I get a really fine little splatter. I did the blue first, and then I'll also do the green, and I don't mind if a little bit of each of those colors kind of mixes, so I didn't bother covering up the sky or the grass as I was doing that. So I'll set this aside to dry, and once it has, I'm going to pop that in my MISTI so I can stamp my sentiment. I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'm stamping this little scripty bonjour from the Bicycle Built for Two, or Bicycle Built for You, I think it is. But anyway, I stamped that on the background, and then I'm going to do an insert for the card base. So I cut the same size panel, and I'm going to stamp in lobster ink, and I'm doing Wishing You a Beautiful Day, and then I took the image with the baguette and cheese and the bottle of wine, which I thought tied in nicely to the Paris theme. I need 1 piece of pattern paper, and I'm going to use a scrap from the Let It Shine Starry Skies. It's this white piece with the gray stars. And I wanted my card background to also represent the French flag, so I used Blue Jay cardstock for my card base, and it's scored and folded to an A2 standard size card. I'll add my insert to the inside of that. Then I'm going to take that white pattern paper and add that to the center of my card. I thought using that pattern paper would be a little more fun than just doing plain white cardstock, and it has that little subtle star pattern that's not too obtrusive, but just adds a little bit of something. And then I'll take a piece of barn red cardstock and line that up in the center of the white pattern paper. I've added foam tape to the back of my focal panel, so I'll peel off those release papers, line that up in the center, and pop that down into place. And then I can bring in my images. And I am going to start with the large apple tree, which is going to go over on the left-hand side and kind of hang off that panel. I am going to trim that down in just a little bit, but I'm going to leave it for now. I'll let that dry and then I'll cut that off later. And then I've got this hot air balloon that I want to go in the top right corner, but first I want to add the larger of the two clouds and kind of tuck that back behind the tree. Then I'm popping up the hot air balloon with some foam tape to give it some dimension. And then I'm going to take the smaller cloud and pop that up with a little bit of foam tape and then liquid glue where it overlaps the hot air balloon, and add that in front just to add it, gives it a little bit more depth into the scene to have that cloud in front. I forgot to add the pennant banner, so I'm going to try to slide that down behind the cloud. I had to lift it up a little bit to get it situated just right, but I thought that was a little cute detail. And then I've got my table and chairs for my little outdoor cafe. So I'm just figuring out the placement. Setting that table down gently. It is popped up on foam tape, and then I'm going to glue the first chair down with liquid glue, and I will add my husband to that chair. So when I picked up the table, the chair came up with it, but that's okay. I'll just pop that right back down into place and then add my husband into the seat, and then put the table right over top so it's so he's sitting behind it. And then right next to him, I'll add the second chair, which will be mine, and that is popped up on foam tape as well. And then I'll add myself into that seat so we can kind of be sitting together on the same side of the table on our little romantic journey to Paris. I'll add the bouquet of roses down at the base of the table. And then I'll take the little menu with the word cafe at the top and add that to the table. And in front of that, I'm going to place the two-tiered tray of treats. And then I am going to add the beret to my head, which I've never worn a beret before, but when in France. And then I'll add the grasses down to the base of the tree, and I'll pop up the little pigeon in front of that, kind of balancing out the bouquet of roses. I did go back and forth with the placement of all these little accessories, trying to decide what was going to go in our hands and what was going to be on the table, and I did change my mind, so I glued the coffee cup to the table, but I'm going to end up moving it and put the macaron in my hand. But like I said, I'm going to switch that in just a second. And then I had the croissant, which of course I had to add in a Paris scene. I mean, come on. As soon as I saw that image in this cafe set and I knew that this challenge was coming up, I knew exactly what I was going to do for this one, because the whole thing was just based around that croissant. I was like, okay, we're going to Paris, which is going to be perfect because I'm literally going there for real. So I did end up moving the macaron and putting it behind the croissant on the table and put one of the little cups of coffee in my hands. And then the other cup of coffee I am going to pop up with some foam tape, and I will tuck that back so that one can be my husband's. So I'm going to tuck that back behind all the other little goodies on this table. So we've got a whole bunch of really fun treats, which I'm sure we're going to have while we're there. To really drive home the Paris theme, I drew myself a tiny Eiffel Tower, and it's not perfect, but it's totally okay because it's just going in the background and help setting the scene. So I am gluing that over on the right hand side, tucking it kind of behind everything, and I'm even going to have some of it hanging off the edge of the card, and then I will take my cutter bee scissors and just trim that off so that it lines up with the edge of the focal panel, and I'll also trim off the left side of my tree so everything lines up. And then I am going to add a little bit of Stardust Stickles because Paris is magic, and so it needs to have a bit of sparkle. It is the City of Lights after all. So I'm adding a little bit of glitter to my hot air balloon, to the pennant banners, to the apples on the tree. I put a little bit on my dress to make it a bit sparkly, and to the bow on the flowers, and then to all of the sweet treats. So I did keep looking at it though, and I felt like there was one thing missing in that right hand side near the Eiffel Tower. So I decided to stamp and color a little butterfly from that Terrific Day stamp set, and I added that to the scene, which just really helps push that Eiffel Tower back a little bit further into the scene, which is helpful since it's not really drawn that well, but that's okay. This was the last video that I had to film before we leave for our trip, so I am so excited. I hope we have a wonderful time, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell if you want to be alerted when I post new videos. The products I use will all be listed and linked for you in the description bar below, and if you'd like to pick up anything for yourself, I have links for you to use. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. You can click on either one to check them out. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye-bye!